Hello, my astrology family. I am here again, Satangat, with the astrology report for the lunation. This time I bring the combined report of the lunar eclipse that occurred Friday, and the great historical conjunction in Capricorn that occurred today. So I would have liked to do this last week, but in fact, I was kind of under the weather because I developed a high allergic reaction to the cedar pollen, who reached record levels this time here in Austin. So I am almost fully recovered, not completely normal, but I can speak now without coughing or feeling something is wrong in my throat. But I'm happy to be here again to talk about this important event, astrological event that is affecting everybody, right? So I hope you are all doing well. It's very difficult and very intense energy and very intense events, very intense time, right? So I hope you are all doing okay. So this lunar eclipse happened Friday, as I said, and even though the eclipse was not visible here in the United States, it was visible in the about the same region where the previous solar eclipse of December was visible throughout the Indian Ocean, from the Arabic Peninsula. This time it also was visible from parts of Europe, and it was visible up until Japan, so all the way through the Middle East and Australia and India, China, and Korea. So all that region in the around the Indian Ocean. So we obviously we have seen the effects of this eclipse in parts of that region. In fact, I think it was today when there was a volcano eruption in the Philippines, which is part of the region. So there was also an eruption in Mexico, and a volcanic eruption in Mexico, and there was repeated earthquakes in Puerto Rico. So those are I would say the Earth reaction to especially the Uranus going direct, as astrologers always point out that when a planet moves either from the direct direction to the retrograde, or vice versa, from retrograde to direct, there are concentrated the energy, so they have more intense effects. So the lunar eclipse happened in Cancer, 20 degrees close to the North Node. So in the case of the lunar eclipse, the Earth is in between the Sun and the Moon, which means that the Earth's shadow is covering the Moon. And with this, our perception gets a little bit of reality. So between our consciousness and our emotional reactions. So the full moon is the fruition or the completion or accumulation of the cycle of the moon that started with the solar eclipse 2 weeks ago. So it is also on the north node, which implies that we receive or we seek or we have something in addition in the house where Cancer falls in our charts. So there is also the opposition aspect between the sun and the moon, which also manifests as we face either situations with other people or some external circumstances have an impact on our consciousness and helps us realize something in our lives related to the energies of Capricorn and Cancer, which are in opposition. So there is also this opposition or need to rebalance between the yin and yang energy, meaning the projective energy that we hold in ourselves, or masculine energy also, and the feminine or receptive energy that we all have in ourselves. It doesn't have to do with gender, but with the projective or receptive energy that we all have. So that's in general for the lunar eclipse. But in this case, the moon was opposed in Capricorn by that multiple conjunction of 4, 5, 5, 6 bodies of cosmic bodies: Saturn, Pluto, the sun, obviously, Mercury, that were in conjunction and series. And there was also another asteroid called Chariklo. So I'm going to talk about general meanings in the video, but I refer you to my blog where I wrote in more detail about many of those and all the details that entail this opposition. The strong opposition between this Capricornian let's say, a structural establishment in the world, including the structures or the architecture of society, political, institutional, and also our civilization, right? Because since Capricorn is the highest point in the zodiac, it represents the full development of the human condition, which is represented by the civilization, right? Is the highest development that we reach. So there is this opposition very strong, and the moon also represents the people. So this is a cycle that we start, in fact, is a culmination, but is also the beginning of a new cycle that will show and manifest as an opposition between this structural Capricorn and the people, right? The conventions of political or society opposite to the people, to the emotional part of ourselves, right? Is the mastery that we have reached of our development, right? and maybe we have abandoned our emotional body, and we have not considered how for example, how the civilization is affecting us. For example, the industrial development that the earth has reached, how is now so is created a civilization that is detached from from emotional body, from the emotional needs of human beings. So there is this separation that is needing to be reconciled, right? And in the since this Capricorn has the South Node, there is also the clinging back to memories, karmic memories of the past and very far in time. And I'm going to talk about this later on. So we have now, since the north node of the moon is in Cancer, we have the tendency to look more for this emotional comfort, for the well-being, for example, family well-being, comfort and shelter, this protection that we need, this motherly nurturance that we need in order to survive these times, right? Everybody in one way or another is looking for a refuge, a way to feel protected and safe. So this is the our tendency to go and seek what the North Node is asking from us to do. So there is also the conjunction, the exact conjunction between Mercury and Pluto. This is the superior conjunction. It means that it is the higher, right, the higher consciousness that we reach mentally. And it is interesting how one way or another we have learned or understood something very clearly, right? It lasted almost the whole day, and it showed something that we needed to know. Some truth was revealed. For example, in the mundane news, we heard about this plane that was destroyed in the air, and it was unfortunately so many people died instantly. So finally, the Iranian government accepted responsibility. It was an error, and well, I guess they accepted all the implications, right? It's a very serious matter. So this is a truth that we learn, but in our personal lives as well, we can now understand something better and more clearly. So there is also the moon, the full moon is also receiving the effects of the conjunction between Pluto and Saturn, which happened today, exactly earlier in the day. And that conjunction, it was a multiple conjunction, in fact, because all of the five cosmic bodies were together almost at the same degree, right? And they all square Eris. Eris is is a dwarf planet whose orbit around the sun is around 500 years. So it's double the time that Pluto takes. And in fact, it's it has so much time in each sign that it's I think it's about in the sign of Aries, it spans about um, I don't know, too many years. That many, so many years that it can be in 1 degree. It can go over 1 degree for 3 to 5 times. So, and it is at 22, 23 degrees also in Aries. So this represents discord, conflict, rebellion, right? I talk more about Aries in my blog if you like to know the mythology of it. She was the goddess of the discord, the one that presented the golden apple to the fairest one, and that triggered the Trojan War. So we see the manifestation of this rebellion all over the world, right? And it's in Aries, which represents the people asking for the right to exist, the right to survive, the right to be. So there is this deep awareness that something needs to change, something needs to really change and evolve and transform in order for us to be able to survive, right? Ceres is also in the conjunction. As I said, she is an asteroid whose mythology is it's the Greek Demetra, or the goddess of the earth, of the abundance of the earth, the nurturance, the agriculture. So Saturn and Pluto cycle revolves around destruction and reconstruction, dissolution and redistribution of power, and it's also the rise and fall of empires. So without them, without their influence, without leaving behind what doesn't serve us any longer, human evolution and progress cannot take place. So we need this cycle in order for us to purge wherever it doesn't belong anymore. And so one of the things that we have seen during the balsamic period or phase during 2018 and 19, we witnessed the decomposition of power, the corruption, the malfunction, deficiencies, and the unsustainability of the global economic establishment. So since Capricorn rules public material security, it's important to realize that the hunger for power is always motivated by economic reasons. Countries and other entities of power seek resources to maintain themselves. And the need for expansion arises when the resources are scarce or only available in other places. Then they have to fight to gain access to them. So in this, we need to focus on Ceres, right? Because Ceres is claiming the ability to nurture her children, right? Ceres conjunction with Pluto reflects in our consciousness the earth trauma of being deprived of its fertility and abundance due to human irreverence, misuse, and pollution of the materials, the substance of the earth, right, and the products of the earth. So there is this the dryness, the coldness, the sterility of and the impassable materiality of methods imposed by Saturn that withers the agriculture's ability to fructify and to nurture the humans, right? So Ceres in Capricorn confuses nurturance with acquisition of goods, and mothering with achieving goals and taking responsibility, and climbing the mountain and being up there in the medium of everybody and everything. So many are still blind to the Earth's transmutation that is taking place at this time. So, however, she makes us well aware of the destructive consequences of the industrial revolution pushed to the extreme of raping the earth to extract her substance. So we need to realize the need to transform our relationship with the planet and create a sustainable economic system. So there is Jupiter also conjuncting his own planetary south node, which is at 9 degrees 37, and it also denotes a process of releasing past and obsolete religious, cultural, ideological, and legal historical ideas and beliefs. So and I refer you also to read my blog on Jupiter in Capricorn. I speak more extensively in detail about Jupiter, how it works in Capricorn. So it all Jupiter is also in orb to square Chiron. So this clinging to certain ideologies are affecting the people's right to exist, right? Because there is this intolerance for different identities and cultural or ethnic diversity and backgrounds, right? So Chiron in Aries is the perception that we have the right to occupy a space and a time, and we need an existence, and it feels threatened, right? Because so many people are moving and migrating due to famine or due to war or persecution, violence of any kind, and people are claiming just the right to survive, right? So unfortunately, the Chiron wound is manifesting through those massive displacements and migrations of entire identity groups, like ethnic groups, right? Jupiter. So in those are exposed to the rejection, abandonment, and persecution of other groups. So this represents very well, manifests very well the Chiron wound, which was the original wound of Chiron being abandoned and rejected. So I wanted to searching a little bit more, because I saw a relationship once this news came out about the confrontation of the West with the East, right? The threatening of war between the United States and Iran. So it brought to my mind the first blog that I wrote about the Saturn Pluto conjunction. There I quoted, I mentioned the 700 years ago, there was the another Saturn and Pluto conjunction, and I refer you to that post to see the chart, right? So that conjunction happened at a time when there was the end of the Crusades, and there was just the seeding, the beginning of the rise of the Ottoman Empire. It was just, I think the date that historians adopted was a little later, like 10 years later. But this in 1284, it was just when the let me see, because I went to the history website, history.com, and there it talks about the end of the Crusades, and how Christians, even though they were not completely defeated, but they started retreating, right? It was the end of the Crusades. And at that time, there was the start of the rise of the Ottoman Empire. So it was just in the transitional period. And I wanted to refer to the eclipse that happened a little bit earlier, like 2 weeks earlier, from that conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in 1284. The eclipse occurred in December 8th. So I went to the NASA website. They have there the list of the Saros families of eclipses. So that was the solar eclipse. And what I found out is that the first eclipse of this Saros family occurred in the year 329. So, and if you know your history, and I went to search for details, but what happened at that time, it was the Emperor Constantine who adopted the Christian faith, and he was the one uniting, right? The uniting or making solid the Roman Empire, right? So Constantine established the capital in Constantinople. In 329, precisely in the month of October, according to I found this date on the website of Center for Online Judaic Studies. It quotes that it was the Emperor Constantine ruled that year the protection of Christians from Jews. And the Christians were also banned from the synagogues of Jews. So that was very Saturnian and Capricornian ruling, separating groups of people, groups, in this case, religious separation. But this talks much about the struggle, right? That it had, that is probably a predecessor to what happened in 1284, right? Or during the Crusades. So this is a history that is accumulated in the karmic points of the chart of today. And what I mean by the karmic points is that Saturn and Pluto are sitting on top of their own planetary south node. So that means that all Plutonian and Saturnian karmic history is brought up by this conjunction to our present day. So, and I have some more to explain about the solar eclipse that happened December 26, 2019, right? That solar eclipse, it was a beginning, right, of a cycle, corresponds to the Saros 132. I went to the NASA website and found out that is the Saros family of it. So the first eclipse, solar eclipse in that family happened in 1208. It was the final crusades, the time of the final crusades. It says that it was the Albigensian crusade, and it started in 1208 and it lasted until 1229. So later, 4 years later, there was the Children's Crusade, that when thousands of young children vowed to march to Jerusalem. So as you see, this memory has much to do with the separation or the Christian and the East religions against the Eastern, the Western religions against the Eastern religion. So this is something that it was sad for me to realize. In fact, there is a resurgence of this conflict, right? And hopefully we don't see anything worse. But what I would encourage people to do is to find a spiritual practice that doesn't have an affiliation that presents this antagonism, right? So we don't need to fight against other people because of their beliefs. In fact, the wars, even though they might have the excuse or the motivation of religious ideals, in fact, people are fighting for resources, for a way to survive. And if we refer, for example, to the year when the 1518, when the other Saturn Pluto conjunction happened, it was a time when Hernan Cortez decided to go to Mexico, right? And that was when the conquest of America practically started. Um, Around that year, right? It was not exactly on that year, but you know, those Saturn Pluto conjunctions are periods of transition, right? So, and what was manifested in that conquest was also the imposition of Christianity over those people who were considered non even human, right? Because they had different beliefs. So atrocities were committed in the name of religion, and this is something that at this time we are supposed to overcome. We're supposed to grow out. We're supposed to be masters of this Capricorn civilization, this Capricorn structure of our personal and societal development. So consider this and find a spiritual practice that encompasses everybody, not only just a faction or a part of humans. We are all humans. We all have the same needs. We all have this need to be in contact with a divinity or something higher than us. And we all need this divine support and this divine relationship with the universe, with the source where we come from. So with this, I think I said everything about this, not only the full moon eclipse, lunar eclipse, but also about this Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. I hope you all do well and find your personal, how you are personally affected by these transits in my blog, Satsangat Astrology. .blogspot.com. I included in the post for the lunar eclipse the list of the rising signs, and you can find how this eclipse affects you and the conjunction as well. So keep in touch, and thank you very much for listening and watching, and I hope you all do well. Blessings, many blessings, and see you next time.